Okay. Right. Here we go. Okay. My clever little nephew is a year old and has recently said his first word. He started doing this thing where he'll point at something and say, this, this. And after a while, my family and I realized that it's almost like he's asking us something, because he'll keep saying it until you tell him what it is. And he points at everything or picks up everything, and now that he's walking, his curious nature can't be stopped. It's so fun to see how fascinated he is, even by the smallest of things. And that's why toddlers are so entertaining, because they're still trying to figure out this whole life business. And everyone in the room used to be like that. They used to be curious. I don't know what it is between childhood and adulthood, but we lose our sense of wonder and our drive for knowledge. Maybe it's a loss of innocence, or maybe as teenagers we think it's not cool to care and we're too embarrassed to ask questions. Which makes sense to me because science, a field that asks questions, is depicted as nerdy. You know, when you think of a scientist, you kind of picture this like crazy hair and large glasses wearing a Star Trek shirt underneath their lab coat, like Big Bang Theory or like Dexter's Laboratory. And I'll give it to you, scientists can be kind of eccentric, but really they're just the kids who never stopped asking questions. Except we do love our lab coats, that part is true. So did anyone want to be a scientist when they were younger? I wanted to be a dog. It didn't really work out for me, so I opted for psychology, so that's the next best thing. But in seriousness, it's kind of a moot question, because whether you wanted to be a scientist or not, you are one. And that's a secret. No.
No, wait a minute. You look like you're into something serious here. Just keep it. Okay? It's no big deal.
Thank you,
I'm taking
it.
a phone call. It's not that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
I saw what you were doing, and I'm like, no,
Thank
it
you.
looks pretty serious.
Sorry about
that.
No big deal. I've got it till I think like 1:30. So.
Okay. We should be out here before then.
Yeah, thank you. It's fine. Okay. But in seriousness, it's kind of a big question, because whether you want to be a scientist or not, you already are one. And that's the secret. Everyone has an inner scientist, and we've had it since the day we were born. It never goes away. You don't grow out of it. You don't just wake up one day and know all the secrets of the universe. And if you do, you should give me a call later. But you are just like my nephew, pointing at the ceiling fan and vacuums and asking, what is this? But we stop doing this when we reach a certain age. We stop being curious. Why? I think what happens is that we misunderstand what it means to be a scientist. And this is a problem, because curiosity is a powerful weapon. It's powerful because when you ask questions, you're engaging in the learning process. In psychology, there's this concept called neuroplasticity, which is kind of this big word for saying our brains change and they're malleable. For a long time, science believed that your brain was static except for cognitive decline. So your brain only changes as you get older, like decline as you get older. Okay. Your brain is the brain, and it remains the same. But in reality, what we've found is that you actually have a different brain every single day. Every morning you wake up, it's different in ways that you can't feel, particularly those of us who are in a learning environment. Because when we learn and challenge ourselves and put ourselves in new environments, it literally changes us physiologically. The cells that interact together, which are called neurons, we used to think that they were connected. A giant circuit, if you will, like a bunch of wires. But in fact, there's this microscopic gap between them, which just tells us that these cells are communicating. In a room full of mostly communication majors, all these little cells are a lot like you. But my point is that the neurons are professional communicators. And what learning does is that it changes the way these cells talk. Perhaps it's making a new friend, or getting rid of an old friend, or maybe it's putting more energy into a current relationship, or change the nature of another one. Learning in your environment can and does affect your brain's chemistry and physical structure. And this is a good thing. It's a powerful thing, because learning keeps your mind healthy and strong. You need to keep engaging in the world of learning. You need to be curious, because it not only enriches your life, but it also delays cognitive decline. And to be a scientist, you don't have to be interested in science. I know that sounds illogical, but science is about exploration and being curious. It isn't just a profession, but it's a way of living. I'm interested in concepts like neuroplasticity because I think there could be medical potential awaiting in the unknown. But you don't have to like neurobiology to be a scientist. You can be a scientist in the way you look at art or ponder philosophy. Maybe you're interested in culture, history, or politics. Whatever it may be, reconnect with that inner scientist and ask questions and learn something new. So, how can we be curious? How do you do it? Well, first off, be open to what's different. We get stuck into what's familiar, or we get stuck into with others who think and act the same. And this is okay. You need a consistency. But you also need a healthy balance of what's different. Try and learn a different way of life, a way of thinking, or a way of doing something. Second, it's okay to be bad. When you first begin anything, you're most likely will suck. Perhaps you're interested in learning about art and how to become a sketch artist. Well, then learn. Don't let being bad stop you from engaging in something new and something you're passionate about. Because I promise you, one day you'll no longer be bad at it. Neuroplasticity, okay? Your brain will change and adapt till you are good. And there's this really cool study, actually, about neuroplasticity and about jugglers. They had these people who had never juggled before in their life. And they taught them how to do it, and they juggled for like about 3 weeks straight. They'd like always have time of day that they would set to juggle. And not only did they get better at it, but the area in your brain that was like for hand coordination actually grew in volume. So I'm just saying, neuroplasticity's got you back. Never be afraid about being bad at something because you will learn. And what goes along with this is also, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be prideful in that you don't want to look unintelligent. Because I promise you, you won't. Science is wrong all the time. All the time. In most research, we are hardly correct. But we will always find something else, or it always redirects our questions. So be wrong. Because being wrong, we learn so much more than being right. And a frustrating and beautiful thing about neuroscience is that the more we learn about the brain is the more questions we have, and it's kind of an unending loop. So, be wrong. And lastly, be passionate. People tend to think I'm smart when I tell them I want to be a neuroscientist, and I always kind of laugh because I promise you, you're just, if not more, smarter than me. Because you're talking to the girl who got a C in her 1-credit finance class, okay? That's kind of sad. But it's because I didn't care and I didn't ask questions. I found my passion when I was 12, reading about GABA inhibitors in my sister's psychology book. I can't help but see the human mind as one of the most beautiful and astounding and complex unknowns in our universe. I do well in my major because I love it and because I'm passionate. Similarly, I have a friend who loves music. He's a really good musician and songwriter, and he appears a musical genius. But the truth is, he's passionate. He works hard, but most importantly, he asks questions. He asks, how can I make something different? What sounds go well together? What are the things I want to say? He desires to learn. We are all scientists in our own way. And being a scientist is a perspective of life and the want to know more, to learn. Be curious, because it can and it will change your mind for the better.
Finishing up my notes.
It's supposed to be, what, 8 to 10? Or it's supposed to be 10?
So I'm going to tell you, I was taking notes the whole time. I'm going to tell you my notes, and then I'm going to have you do it again.
Okay.
And I'm going to time you.
Okay.
And then I'll take more notes if I don't anything else.
Okay.
And then I'll actually get up and like show you different ways you can use your body. Okay. So, overall, I really enjoyed your talk so far. And again, we're going to get more accurate time on it. You have time to still add to it. I think it was probably under 8 minutes, but I think most of our under 8 minutes right now. But okay, so for general feedback, after hearing the full run through, at the beginning when you were talking about, when you first started talking about the plasticity part, I think that it would be a lot more effective if you pause. And I don't know if it's more about that since I don't know if it's your first run through, but if you pause, like, I just think pausing adds dramatic effect and it also draws your audience in. And I know that, like, with neuroplasticity, it's something that I'm interested in, but I don't necessarily have a lot of knowledge on.
Okay.
So just like having me kind of wait on your every word would probably draw me in and have me pay a lot more attention so that I could understand more.
So, like, pausing between, like, the last thing or, like,
so read the
after
first,
neuroplasticity.
when you first talk about when you first bring up the word, read that part again, read that paragraph,
so
however you have to say it.
In psychology, there's a new concept called neuroplasticity. So pause there.
Just read the whole thing.
Oh, okay. So in psychology, there's a new concept called neuroplasticity, which is a big word for saying our brains can change and they're malleable. That's it.
Okay. So I would say, do you have, like, can I see how you have it formatted?
Yeah. Sorry. Oops.
Can you read that whole thing?
Oh, sure. Okay. So in psychology, there's a new concept called neuroplasticity, which is kind of a big word for saying our our brains can change and they're malleable. For a long time, science believed that when your brain is static, except for cognitive decline, your brain is your brain and it remains the same always. But in reality, what we have found is that you have a different brain every single day. Every morning you wake up, it's different. It's different in ways that you can't feel, particularly those of us in the learning environment. Because when we learn, when we challenge ourselves and put ourselves into new environments, it literally changes us physiologically. The cells that interact together, which are called neurons, we used to think that they were connected like a giant circuit of wires. But in fact, there's this microscopic gap between them, which tells us these cells are communicating. And in a room full of mostly communication majors, all these little cells are a lot like you.
Okay, so I like the pace you read it out a lot more this time. I like the pauses you took. It seemed like you're a lot more mindful of, like, me just bringing up the whole pause situation. And also when you talk about every morning you wake up, okay, so I'm big on, like, body language. Okay. So when you say every morning, I don't know if you, I can't remember from previous presentations given. Do you walk around?
I
tend to stand.
I try to walk around, but she also gave me a comment once that she thought I was wandering a little bit too much.
Okay.
So, like, she was like, be more mindful of it. So, like, I try to, but I also, like, I kind of, like, if I don't walk, I kind of, like, step here, which kind of bothers me. So I try to just be like, oh, I'm definitely doing it on purpose.
Yeah, I like the more easing, like, instead of people, like, standing, because it's kind of awkward, you just watch their feet. Mm-hmm. I like that you can say in the morning when you wake up, and then step over, and then go to the second part of that sentence. Where's the one where you say in the morning?
It's like a part of it. It's like a little bit. All right. Yeah, right here. That one?
Yeah.
Okay. But in reality, you have a different brain every single day. Every morning when you wake up, it's different in ways that you can't even feel.
Mm-hmm. Like that. Yeah, like how you kind of like. But I feel like in my head, okay, I'm a visual person, so I feel like that kind of segments the sentence in a nice way.
Okay.
So, like, in the morning when you wake up, it's like starting.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And then also,
it'll also be easier when I'm not holding my phone.
Yeah.
So I can be like,
yeah.
Hello.
And then, so I said the need to pause more. You got that exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
The second time you read through. And then, I also thought it would be cool when you say the new friend and old friend part.
Yeah, but neurons stuff.
Yeah, I think it would be cool if you, like, I don't know if you plan on having a PowerPoint.
Actually, I was just talking about that with someone today.
Mm-hmm.
I think I will.
Okay. I think it would be cool, like, even, again, visual me coming in, you'll hear about that today. Like, if you illustrate it on, since I know she talks a lot about design, if you had a PowerPoint behind you, when you say new friends or old friend, do you say new friend or old friend first?
I say new friends first.
Okay, when you say new friend, you could put, like, a recent picture of you on a close friend, and then click over in old friends. Like, so as soon as you say new friends, click, and then as soon as you say old friends, click. And it's kind of like connecting our minds. It's giving us a little more view into your personal life, which allows us to, like, I feel like, allows us to see where your passion for this topic comes from.
Okay.
So I would like to see that. And then next, when you explain doing the open part, so I know towards the middle you talk about being open and everything.
Oh, you mean like towards the how you can be curious?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I think, like, and again, I know you won't have your phone in your hand. Like opening your actual body like this or something, like showing, like, being open and, like, don't get carried away with your hands. Anybody be distracted by that, but I think it's cool to have little, just like subtle body movements that connect to what you're saying, kind of like enforce what you're saying. Okay. And then I also believe this is you could include video snippets from the judging part. I don't know how long the video is, but I know like, and this might be something we could ask her about. Like, her about she wants actual videos.
I don't know if I do a video, but I would love to show like their actual brain scans, because they're some really simple brain scans, so you could probably, like, even people who are not like trained can actually probably see the difference between the two, because they have them highlighted. And just being like, even like our brains do change with like whatever we're doing, and like we can't get better at things.
Just like that evidence, I think that would work as like evidence piece for you.
Okay.
And just further again reinforcing what you're saying. And then let's see, when you talk about your guy friend at the end,
yeah,
and like his questions, another design thing, I think it would be cool to have like a PowerPoint, have like thought bubbles or whatever, and have his questions popping up as you say it. So it's kind of just like another visual representation. But other than that, that's what I noticed the first time around. So it has been really good. Like, I really enjoyed what you're talking about, and I think you did a great job of like breaking down a pretty complex topic into something that's like easy to listen to and understand at the same time. Because like, I mean, I don't study neuroplasticity, but I understand more about this because of how you broke it down. So I really enjoyed that. You're doing a great job so far.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna time you this time.
Okay.
And then we'll see where you're standing, and then I'm also gonna take more notes. So when I'm not looking at you, I'm just
no, you're fine. I'm gonna try to like not use my phone as much, but I feel like I'm gonna do worse if that's the case. So we'll see how this goes.
Whatever you are comfortable with. Only let me get my time notes. Okay, and I'm ready whenever you are.
My clever little nephew is a year old, and he has recently said his first word. This. He started doing this thing where he'll just point at random objects and say, this. And after a while, my family and I realized that he's asking us a question. He's asking us what something is, and he'll keep pointing at it until you tell him. And now that he's walking, his curious nature cannot be stopped. And he questions everything. He picks up everything, and he always says, what's this? And it's so fun to watch how fascinated he is by even the smallest of things. And toddlers are such entertaining little creatures because they're still trying to figure out this whole life business. And everyone in this room used to be like that. They used to be curious. And I don't know what it is about between childhood and adulthood, but we lose our sense of wonder and our drive. Maybe it's the loss of innocence, or maybe as teenagers we think it's not cool to care, or it's too embarrassing to ask questions, which makes a lot of sense to me because science, a field where we ask questions, is depicted as nerdy. You know, when you think of scientists, you kind of picture this like crazy hair, like big goggles, a Star Trek shirt under the lab coats, like Big Bang Theory or Dexter's Laboratory. And I'll give it to you, science can be some of the most eccentric people I've ever met, but really, they're just the kids who never stopped asking questions. Except we do love our lab coat science too. Did anyone in this room want to be a scientist when they were younger? Yeah, I wanted to be a dog. It didn't really work out, so I opted for psychology, which was the second best. But in all seriousness, it's kind of a moot question, because whether you want to be a scientist or not, you are already one. You already are one. That's what I'm saying. There we go. I'll fix it. We're fine. Okay. You already are one. And that's the secret. Everyone has an inner scientist. And we've had it since the day we were born. It never goes away. And you don't grow out of it. You don't just wake up one day and know all the answers to the universe. And if you do, you should give me a call after this class. But you are just like my nephew, pointing to ceiling fans and vacuums and asking, what is this? But we stop doing this when we get to a certain age. Why? I think what happens is that we misunderstand what it means to be a scientist. And this is a problem, because curiosity is a powerful weapon. It's powerful because when you ask questions, you are engaging in the learning process. In psychology, there's this new concept called neuroplasticity, which is kind of this big word for saying our brains can change. They're malleable. And for a long time in science, we believed that your brain was static except for a cognitive decline as you age. Your brain was your brain, and it remained the same always. But this isn't true. We have found that in reality, you have a different brain every single day. Every morning you wake up, different, and in ways you can't feel. Particularly those of us who are in the learning environment. Because when we learn, when we challenge ourselves and put ourselves into new environments, it literally changes us physiologically. The cells that interact together, which are called neurons, we used to think that they were connected like a giant circuit of wires. But in fact, there's this microscopic gap between them, which tells us that these cells are actually communicating. And in a room full of mostly comm majors, all these little cells are a lot like you. Neurons are professional communicators. And what learning does is that it changes the way these cells talk. Perhaps it's making a new friend, or getting rid of an old friend. Or maybe it's how much energy you're putting into a current relationship, or changing the nature of a new relationship. Learning in your environment can and does affect your brain's chemistry and physical structure. And this is a good thing. It's a powerful thing, because learning keeps your mind healthy and strong. You need to keep engaging in the world of learning. You need to be curious, because it not only enriches your life, but it delays cognitive decline. And to be a scientist, you don't have to be interested in science. I know it sounds really illogical, but science is about exploration and being curious. It's not just a profession. It's a way of living. I'm interested in concepts like neuroplasticity, because I think there could be medical potential awaiting the unknown. But you don't have to like neurobiology to be a scientist. You can be a scientist in the way you look at art or ponder philosophy. Maybe you're interested in culture or history or politics. Whatever it may be, reconnect with that inner scientist and ask questions and learn something new. But how can we be serious? How do you be serious? Curious. That's the thing. How do you be curious? Well, first off, be open to what's different. We get stuck into what's familiar or with others who think and act like us. And this is okay. You need consistency in your life too. But you also need a healthy balance of different. Try and learn a new way of thinking, a different way of life, or a new way of doing. Second, it's okay to be bad. When you first begin anything, you most likely sucked. And perhaps you're interested in learning art and how to become a sketch artist. Well, then learn. Don't let being bad stop you from engaging in something new and something you're passionate in. Because I promise you, one day you'll no longer be bad at it. Your brain will change and adapt till you are good at it. There's actually this really cool study about this. There's these people who have never juggled before in their life. And these researchers gathered them all together, and they had them practice juggling for weeks. They would always have to have this many hours a day with juggling. And then at the end of it, they actually, not only were they proficient in juggling, but they studied their brain scans from before and after. And the volume in your brain that has to do with eye-hand coordination, we saw a larger increase of volume, meaning that neuroplasticity, your brain changed. And so don't be afraid to be bad at it at the beginning, because your brain's got your back. Okay. And what goes along with don't be afraid of being bad, don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be so prideful in that you don't want to look unintelligent, because I promise you won't. Science is wrong all the time. All the time. In most research, we hardly are ever correct. But this is a good thing, because we learn something different. We find something else, or it redirects our question. So be wrong, because we learn so much more from being wrong than we ever do from being right. It's a frustrating and beautiful thing in neuroscience, really, because the more we learn about the brain, the more questions we have. So it's kind of this ongoing loop. But lastly, be passionate. People tend to think I'm smart when I tell them I want to be a neuroscientist, and I kind of always laugh because it's really not true. I promise you're just as smart as me, if not smarter than me. But you're also, because you're talking to the girl who got a C on her one credit finance class, okay? But it's because I care. I found my passion when I was 12, reading about GABA inhibitors in my sister's psychology book. I can't help but see the human mind as one of the most beautiful, astounding, and complex unknowns in our universe. I do well in my major because I love it, because I'm passionate. Similarly, I have a friend who loves music, and he's a really good musician and songwriter. He appears a musical genius. But the truth is that he's passionate. He works hard, and most importantly, he asks questions. He asks, how can I make something different? What sounds go well together? What are the things that I want to say in this piece? He desires to learn. And this is him still being a scientist. We are all scientists in our own way. Being a scientist is a perspective of life and the want to know more, to learn. So be curious, because it can change your mind for the better.
Okay. So that was very good. The time was 9 minutes and 10 seconds. So you have the time in the bag. Okay, so I wrote down some more notes. So what I'm gonna do is tell you my notes, and then I'm gonna do some modeling for you.
Okay.
And I'm trying to decide. I think I'm gonna do modeling, but I'm also gonna combine it with line by line. And I'm gonna have you do model for you.
Okay.
Okay. So first note: when you say you want to be a dog, this is time for dramatic pause. So you ask everybody if they want to be a scientist before they grew up, and then you say, "Yeah." Pause. Well, I wanted to be a dog, and then kind of just look at them like, "Well, I wanted to be a dog." Kind of like bringing back that kid mentality that we all had. And then when you start talking about the complexity of neurons, I think it would be good to change the tone of your voice, because when you start talking about, I know one part you were like, there's actually a little bit of space between it and all that, okay. And you start basically breaking down more into it. And I think changing the tone of your voice will again make sure that your stays drawn in, even when you get into the more complex parts of your presentation. So I'll model that to you and how I think that should go. And then okay, I think this is where I can probably instead of just saying, "You mind if I hold your phone?"
Sure.
Where is the part about
which part of it? Like the very beginning
about the just space between
sure.
And all that.
Okay. It's this one here, kind of going into that one. So
you say it starts at this.
Yeah, that one right there. Cells.
Okay. So I would say. Yeah. Okay. The cells that ooh, girl, can I talk?
I can't either. It's okay. I kept
the cells that interact together, which are called neurons, we used to think that they were connected, but actually, why can't I read?
It's okay.
The cells that interact together.
It's probably just crappily written down, so you say it better in my head.
We used to think that they. Are you trying to say we used to think that they were connected?
Yeah,
okay.
Since I just kind of threw it together.
I got it. The cells that interact together, which are called neurons, we used to think that they were connected, a giant circuit, if you will. But in fact, there's this microscopic gap between them, which tells us that these cells are communicating. So you can say, but in fact, there's this microscopic gap between them, which tells us that these cells are communicating. In a room full of mostly communication majors, all these little cells are a lot like you. Okay. So do you hear that?
Yeah, the button fact, right?
Yeah. So the button fact, but in fact, and even
no.
But in fact, there's this microscopic gap, and then you can step back over and say, in a room, and lower your voice, in a room full of mostly communication majors, all of these little cells are a lot like you.
Okay.
So you want to try that?
Yeah. All right. Okay. So
you're doing great.
Thank you. It's kind of stressful. All right. The cells that interact together, which are called neurons, we used to think that they were connected, a giant circuit, if you will. But in fact, there's this microscopic gap between them, which tells us that these cells are communicating. And in a room full of communication majors, all these little cells are a lot like you.
So if you say, in a room full of communication majors, all of these little cells are like, all of these little cells, you could even point to are a lot like you. Kind of like you're saying.
right.
like you.
So,
Try that last line again.
So in a room full of mostly communication
Wow. Good girl.
In a room full of mostly communication majors, all these little cells are a lot like you.
Because I feel like when you bring your voice down and say that, it's kind of like, again, talking to me.
She's talking about me?
Even though there's a crowd of people in here, a whole classroom, she's talking about me. So yeah, I like how you say they're a lot like you. So just kind of like, I keep thinking of playing in my head, but kind of making it like relate to them.
Okay.
And then the next one. Okay. So when you start talking about the steps, I know you said like step 1.
Yeah.
Can you go to that section,
yeah.
please? So I understand where she may have said like you move around the room, and like I know I told you to move, but I feel like there's a more effective way it could be done. So I'm gonna show you.
Right here.
Okay. So
it's kind of like sucking me curious.
Okay, that's where the first step is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how can you be curious? How do you do it? And then you could be like, I think it would be more effective to step and stand. So I'm going to show you.
Okay.
So let's say you're just already over here. You say, well, how can you be curious? How do you do it? Well, first off, be open to what's different. We get stuck in what's familiar, or we get stuck with others who think and act the same. And this is okay. You need consistency too, but you need a healthy balance of difference. Try and learn a different way of life, a way to think, or even a way of doing something. Second, it's okay to be bad. When you first begin thinking, you most likely suck. So, you kind of step in and you stand.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, you want to try that?
Yeah, sure. So, how can you be curious? How do you do it? Well, first off, be open to what's different. We get stuck in what's familiar, or get stuck in with others who think and act the same. And this is okay. You need consistency too. But you need a healthy balance of different. Try and learn a different way of life, a way of thinking, or a way of doing. Second, it's okay to be bad. When you first begin anything, you most likely sucked. Like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And like I know the way she'll probably set up the classroom the same way, like instead of being two separate sides.
Yeah.
And I think it would just be a lot more powerful, less percentage to the crowd, to be like talking to them like they're still here. But first step, and then you step over
talk to them. Okay.
It's kind of like you're delivering a little pockets of information.
Make a little.
Okay.
Different.
And then the next one, okay. Doing great so far. I like the finance joke because finance class is something I had to take, and I don't think any of us really enjoyed it.
I did fail that class.
It's a little joke to have in there. So before you deliver the can you go to where the finance joke is?
Yeah.
Make sure before I get from this question.
Probably get rid of that whole. So you're talking to the girl.
You say you'll get rid of what?
I was gonna get rid of. There's a word in there that I'm gonna get rid of.
Yeah. That's a good. People tend to think I'm smart when I won't be in sciences, and I always laugh. Because I promise you, I'm just okay. So, enough. Lastly, be passionate. I think you should know, like, I can do a diamond movement. So, like, when you do are the steps right before this?
Yes, or that's the last step kind of thing.
Okay,
like,
so
like
you did over here, you did up here. I think you should come forward and be like, lastly, be passionate. People tend to think I'm smart when I tell them I want to be a neuroscientist. And I laugh because I promise you, I'm just as smart as you are. Just because you are just as smart as me. You're also talking to the girl who got a C, so that part. So when you say, people tend to I always laugh because I promise you, you're just as smart as me. I mean, you're also talking to a girl who got a C in her 1 credit finance class. So when you say in her 1 credit, you could do like a handbook finance class. It's kind of like you're dropping a bomb on them.
Okay.
Let's try that out.
All right. So, lastly, be passionate. People tend to think I'm smart when I tell them I want to be a neuroscientist. And I always laugh because I promise you are just as smart as me. You're talking to the girl who got a C in her 1-credit finance class, okay? But it's because I didn't care. I didn't ask questions.
Okay, try it again, but say you're talking to the girl who got a C. Pause. In her one credit finance class.
Just that line then?
Yeah.
Okay. You're talking to a girl who got a C in her 1-credit finance class.
Exactly. Okay. And then at the end, when you're like, because I love it, because I'm passionate, you'll probably still be in the same location. I don't know how close to because I love it.
It's like the same. It's like right
there. Okay, perfect. So when you're still standing up here, you can be like, because I love it. Because I'm passionate. You know, like.
Okay.
Again.
All right. So I'll just read that. I found my passion when I was 12, reading about GABA inhibitors in my sister's psychology book. I can't help but see the human mind as one of the most beautiful, astounding, and complex unknown in our universe. I do well in my major because I love it. Because I'm passionate.
So you could say, I do well in my major because I love it. Because I'm passionate.
Okay. Yeah. I do well in my major because I love it. Because I'm passionate.
I like it. Okay, so those are all my notes. So let me see what I was going to do next. What I was going to do, I want you to go back to the beginning where you talk about your
nephew. Yeah.
And I want you to do that. We're going to do that line by line.
Okay.
And then depending on how much time, I might just have you go through the bottom part because that's where most of my notes are.
Okay.
For you, I just want to see how you do that without my experience. And you can just talk about your problem, and I think we'll be good.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. All right, so line by line. So from the very top. All right.
That first major paragraph.
Okay. My clever little nephew is a year old, and he has recently said his first word. This.
Okay, so stop there. When you say that, I think you should, visuals thing is my tea, that's my place. Okay, so when you walk onto the stage, I think you should either already have a picture of your nephew up or click as soon as you start talking. Like, what's the first word?
My clever little nephew. Or my clever little nephew.
My clever little nephew. He's up there. He can pop up. And then when you get to the word this, click again, and it's like this in all caps, like a white background, whatever.
Okay.
I'll be like, okay.
Okay. He started doing this thing where he would point at something and say, this.
I like that.
And after a while, my family and I realized that it's almost like he's asking us what something is. Because he'll keep saying it until you tell him.
Okay, so you could be like, and by, no, look.
Okay, it's okay. I don't always read the same exact words that I read. That's fine.
You say, read that one again, sorry.
And after a while, my family and I realized that it's almost like he's asking us what something is. Because he'll keep saying it until you tell him.
Okay, I like that.
All right.
That sounds good how it is.
He points at everything and picks up everything. And now that he's walking, his curious nature can't be stopped.
So he points at everything, he picks up everything.
So he points at everything, he picks up everything, and now that he's walking, his curious nature cannot be stopped.
Mm-hmm. And I like how you added that walk. Hold on. Okay. He points at everything, he picks up everything. And now that he's walking,
okay.
I don't want it to be like too over dramatic, like you basically not show up there.
A slight little.
Read those first lines together. With
okay.
Notes.
The first lines,
like the very to that point.
Everything up to that point. Okay. Yeah. So. Okay. My clever little nephew is a year old and has recently said his first word. This. He started doing this thing where he will point at something and say, this. And after a while, my family and I realized that it's almost like he's asking what something is. Because he'll keep saying it until you tell him. And he points at everything and picks up everything. And now that he's walking, his curious nature cannot be stopped. Sorry, I lost myself.
So, I like it I think once you start practicing like the pointing and the picking up,
I'll get it.
It will get more natural.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So go on to the next one after that.
It is so fun to watch how fascinated he is by even the smallest of things. Toddlers are such. Oh, sorry. Okay. Toddlers are such entertaining little creatures because they're still trying to figure out this whole life business.
I think at that point you could stand them. Toddlers are such interesting creatures because they're still trying to figure out
this whole life thing.
Yeah, I don't think you need too much movement.
Okay.
Kind of like one position for that.
Okay. All right. Well, then, would you want me to start walking here? So I said, and everyone in this room used to be like that. They used to be curious.
So let me see.
So toddlers are such little entertaining little creatures because they're still trying to figure out the whole life business.
Everyone in this room. Okay, so this is what you should do. Once you do the small thing, you should start walking and be like, toddlers are such entertaining little creatures because they're still trying to figure out this whole thing. And you can get, and everyone in this room and pause.
Okay.
And everyone in this room. And look like, when you say everyone in the room, kind of like survey the crowd, like, okay, seeing everyone.
All right. I'll just get some toddlers. Yeah. So toddlers are such entertaining little creatures because they're still trying to figure out this whole life thing. And everyone in this room used to be like that.
So you don't necessarily have to pause on that part. I don't think you should necessarily pause on your words. You just be like, and when you say, and everyone in this room, no, keep going. So I don't think a dramatic pause. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like
I see stuff in my head.
Let's pause.
Yeah.
So everyone in this room used to be like that. Okay. They used to be curious. I don't know what it is between childhood and adulthood, but we lose our sense of wonder and our drive for knowledge. Keep going. Okay. Maybe it's a loss of innocence. Maybe as teenagers we think it's not cool to ask questions or it's not cool to care and too embarrassing to ask questions. Which makes sense to me because science, a field that asks questions, is depicted as nerdy.
It's not cool to ask questions or what is it? It's not cool to seem interested or ask questions or embarrassing to ask questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not cool to care and too embarrassing to ask questions.
As I said, it's not cool to care or too embarrassing to ask questions.
Okay.
And like kind of like struggle, like
all right.
Because everybody thinks about teenagers.
So maybe it's a loss of innocence. Maybe as teenagers we think it's not cool to care and too embarrassing to ask questions. Which makes sense to me because science, a field that asks questions, is depicted as nerdy. You know when you think of a scientist, you picture this crazy hair, large glasses, wearing a Star Trek shirt under their lab coat, like Big Bang Theory or Dexter's Laboratory. That's something. And I'll give it to you.
That's another position where you could probably pop up pictures like
okay,
Big Bang
yeah. And I'll give it to you. Scientists can be some very eccentric individuals, but really, they're just the kids who never stopped asking questions. I just have except we do lab coats. That's true.
Okay.
I do have a picture of me in lab coats that I can put that up there and be like,
I like that first. I think that's a great intro paragraph.
Okay.
I really like that. So, what did I say I was going to do? I was going to have you go through the end with the, again, that first paragraph is good. I think you have the notes in there, so.
Which one? How far down?
The end where did the notes? My notes start.
You talked a lot about. It's kind of spread out. You did mostly at the end, but I was like, you started talking mostly about like when I talked about neurons. Do you want me to start there?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll start at neuroplasticity.
I actually like when you talk about the dog. Is that
we
further
can
from the neurons?
Yeah, that's like literally right after my first one. So we'll just do everything about the first. We'll just do it all.
Start from the beginning.
Okay.
Should I time you?
Do you want me to start from the very beginning?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Here we go. I gotta remember everything.
You got it in there.
Probably won't remember all the things.
I don't want to be nervous in front of you. If you mess up, it's life.
Okay. My clever little nephew is a year old and has recently said his first word, this. And he started doing this thing where he'll point at something and say, this. And after a while, my family and I realized that it's almost like he's asking what something is. Because he'll keep saying it until you tell And he points at everything, he picks up everything, and now that he's walking, he cannot stop his curious nature. And it's so fun to watch how fascinated he is by even the smallest of things. Toddlers are such entertaining little creatures because they're still trying to figure out this whole life business. And everyone in this room used to be like that. They used to be curious. I don't know what it is between childhood and adulthood, but we lose our sense of wonder and our drive for knowledge. Yeah.
I don't know what it is between childhood and adulthood, so you don't necessarily have to sidestep. You could be between childhood and adulthood.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know what it is, but between childhood and adulthood, we lose our sense of wonder and our drive for knowledge. Maybe it's our loss of innocence. Maybe as teenagers we think it's not cool to care or too embarrassing to ask questions. Which makes sense to me because science is a field that asks questions. It's depicted as nerdy. You know, when you think of a scientist, you picture a person with crazy hair, big glasses, having a Star Trek t-shirt on their lab coat. And I'll give it to you, scientists can be some very eccentric individuals, but really, they're just the kids who never stop asking questions. Except we do love our logos. Did anyone want to be a scientist when they were younger? Yeah. I wanted to be a dog. But it didn't really work out for me, so I opted for psychology. But in seriousness, it's kind of a moot question. Because whether you want to be a scientist or not, you are already one. And that's a secret. Everyone has this inner scientist, and we've had it since the day we were born.
Sorry, pause again. So whether you want to be a blank or a blank,
whether you want to be a scientist or not.
Whether you want to be a scientist or not, you already are one.
You already are one.
So do that.
Okay. Whether you want to be a scientist or not, you already are one. And that's the secret. Everyone has an inner scientist, and we've had it since the day we were born. It never goes away. You don't grow out of it. And you don't just wake up one day and know all the answers in the universe. And if you do, you should give me a call. But you are just like my nephew.
Sorry, pause the answer. And if you do, you should give me a call.
Okay. And if you do, just give me a call. But you are just like my nephew, pointing at ceiling fans and vacuums and asking, what is this? But we stop doing that when we reach an age. We stop being curious. Why? I think
when
what
you
happens.
Say why, I know you're on your phone.
Okay.
You say why, just make sure when you ask why.
Why? Okay.
Like you're asking. Look, you can even pick one person and be like, why?
Okay. Yeah. All right. I think what happens is that we misunderstand what it means to be a scientist. And this is a problem because curiosity is powerful. It's powerful because when you ask questions, you're engaging in the learning process. In psychology, there's this new concept called neuroplasticity, which is kind of a big word for saying that our brains change. They're malleable. And for a long time, scientists believed that your brain was static, except for cognitive decline. But they thought your brain was your brain, and it remained the same always. But in reality, you have a different brain every single day. Oh, I walked wrong. That's fine. Every morning you wake up different, and in ways that you can't feel, particularly those of us in the learning environment. Because when we learn and we challenge ourselves and put ourselves into new situations, it literally changes us psychologically. Physiologically. The cells that interact together, they're called neurons. And we used to think that they were connected to a giant circuit of wires, if you will. But in fact, there's this microscopic gap between them, which tells us these cells are communicating. And in a room full of mostly communication majors, all these little cells are a lot like you. Neurons are professional communicators. And what learning does is that it changes the way these cells talk. Perhaps it's making a new friend, or getting rid of an old toxic friend. Or maybe it's how much energy you're putting into a current relationship, or changing the nature of that relationship. Learning in your environment can and does affect your brain's chemistry and physical structure. And this is a good thing. It's a powerful thing because learning keeps your mind healthy and strong. You need to keep engaging in the world of learning. You need to be curious because it not only enriches your life, but it delays cognitive decline. I should probably switch those. And to be a scientist, you don't have to be interested in science. I know that sounds kind of illogical, but science is about exploration and being curious. It isn't just a profession, but it's a way of living. I'm interested in concepts like neuroplasticity because I think that there could be medical potential awaiting in the unknown. But you don't have to like neurobiology to be a scientist. You can be a scientist in the way you look at art or ponder philosophy, or maybe you're interested in culture or history or politics. Whatever it may be, reconnect with that inner scientist and ask questions and learn something new. So, how can you be curious? How do you do it? Well, first off, be open. Be open to what's different. We get stuck in what's familiar or with others who think and act the same as us, and this is okay. We need consistency in our lives. But you also need a healthy balance of different. Try and learn a different way of life, a way of thinking, and a way of doing something. Second, it's okay to be bad. When you first begin anything, you most likely suck. Perhaps you're interested in learning about art and how to become a sketch artist. Well, then learn. Don't let being bad stop you from engaging in something new and something you're passionate about. Because I promise you, one day you'll no longer be bad at it. There's this really cool study, actually, about people who have never juggled before in their life. And they were tasked with juggling for weeks. They would have a set amount of day just to juggle. And at the end of the study, we compared their brain scans of before and after, and you could see that there was where there's hand coordination in your brain, there's a larger volume, meaning that these people, not only did they get better at it, like behaviorally, but their brains literally changed so that they were good at it. So don't worry about being bad because your brain's got your back.
I like that. I like how you're stepping for the steps. You're doing a really great job at that. So since you'll be in that one step spot already, when you start talking about the juggling, make sure you just survey the whole crowd so that the other half doesn't feel like.
Okay. That's good. Right. And what goes along with not being afraid to be bad, but never be afraid to be wrong. Don't be so prideful that you don't want to look unintelligent, because you won't. Science is wrong all the time. All the time. In most research, we hardly are ever correct, but we will always find something else, or it redirects our questions, or redirects our questions. So be wrong. We learn so much more from being wrong than we ever do being right. And it's a frustrating and beautiful thing about neuroscience, honestly, because the more we learn, the more questions we have, and it kind of feels like an unending loop. I might get rid of that, that's fine. And lastly, be passionate. People tend to think I'm smart when I tell them I want to be a neuroscientist. And I always laugh because I promise you are just as smart as me, if not smarter. You're talking to the girl who got a C in her one credit finance class. But it's because I didn't care. I didn't ask questions. I found my passion when I was 12, reading about GABA inhibitors in my sister's psychology book. And I can't help but see the human brain as one of the most beautiful, astounding, and complex unknowns in our universe. I do well in my major because I do well in my major because I love it. Because I'm passionate. I have a friend who really loves music, and he's a really good musician and songwriter. He appears a musical genius. But the truth is he's passionate. He works hard. But most importantly, he asks questions. He asks, how can I make something different? What sounds go well together? What are the things I want to say? He desires to learn, and because of that, he is a scientist. And we are all scientists in our own way. Being a scientist is a perspective of life and the want to know more. To learn. Be curious, because it can and it will change your mind for the better. Okay?
Okay. That was excellent.
Okay.
I already see the immense improvement from the beginning. I feel like your nerves are going away as they should be.
Okay.
Because, I'm nobody to be nervous. Okay, so it came out to 10:04, but of course we stopped and everything. I
Yeah.
showed you some different ways.
It's probably about 9 something.
Yeah. So that was good. I really could see that you're using the tips that I told you already. So I'm glad to see that. And then also, I think just for like practicing until next Tuesday, I think something that's always helped me that I heard from someone else that was suggested to me is just to practice in front of a mirror so that you can see, if you have a mirror that's big enough, so that you can see like your body movement. And just like, I think you should do that at least 3 times. And then also at least twice or even 3 times. Practice in front of a friend or friends and just get their feedback and see how they feel, like how comfortable they feel being in your audience and how like they understand like the topic and everything. Or
Okay.
maybe they can give you some feedback that I may not see that because they're different people, different than me. But other than that, I think just make sure you pay attention to like the tone of your voice and like not speeding up. I know it's easy to get nervous in front of the class, even though we know each other better. I know I get nervous, so don't get nervous the day of and speed up. You have a really good time. You have great content, and like just take the time to really explain where you come from. Like you say, you have passion, and let your passion show just through your delivery and everything.
Okay.
And if you do that, I think you're doing a great job. You're doing great so far. I look forward to seeing just how much better it'll get by next Tuesday. And I hope that my feedback today was helpful.
No, it was. It was super helpful.
I'm not a big fan of critiquing.
No, I really like. You did a really good job. Actually,
Thank you.
You're a good coach. I was like, you did it really.
But yeah, you made it easy, girl, because you had your stuff together.
Kind of. We'll just
No,
fake
you
it.
did.
Okay. Goodbye.